Do you know what's stopping you from doing that one thing you've always wanted to do? You don't, because it doesn't exist. This is Josh Bauer, and no, it really doesn't exist. Starting a podcast versus starting a YouTube channel. That's what this episode is going to be about. And it's not going to get into too many technical issues or technical details of either of these two things. So, for example, I have a lot of technical knowledge in podcasts between RSS feeds and file hosting and all that stuff. And I'm not going to really get into that too much. But what I am going to cover, and I'm going to do so with my friend from college, Dillon Gallagher, is we're going to go over why you might want to start a podcast, why you might want to start a YouTube channel, what considerations you might want to think about when doing either of those things. Do you want to do both? And if you do decide to do either one or both, what are some strategies that you should try to implement, both marketing-wise and content-wise, but also what are some processes that you should consider using, and what should be your goals for starting? Like, why are you doing this? What's going to be the best mindset going in to make sure that you actually stick with it long term and enjoy what you're doing? So my friend Dillon and I met in college a couple years ago. We had some classes together and ended up being coworkers, and he's very smart, very dedicated, and he's pretty good at what he does, and he developed a pretty large following on YouTube over just the past couple months. So he's going to have a lot of insight to share, I think, about YouTube and about what he does and why he does it, and I think this will be a pretty interesting episode. So with that said, let's bring on Dillon Gallagher. So you and I met at FLCC, Finger Lakes Community College. We were both going for a business administration degree. And actually, I think we first met in psychology club, right?
Yes, we did. I was trying to remember if it was that one class, microeconomics, I think. But yes, it was psychology.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we did have a class together. I actually forgot about that. Oh, so you were in with Anoop?
Yes.
Okay.
I was in the front row. I think you were in the back corner.
Interesting. I remember that. That was before we were really friends, I think.
Yeah, we kind of chatted here and there, but
right.
It's when we became a little before that.
So why did you actually decide to join psychology club?
That was my first semester at college, and I was just it was a whole new ball game between high school and college. So I was really just trying to kind of find a group of people to talk to. Nothing really came out of it. I remember the club being kind of boring and nothing really happening, but
yeah, it was definitely pretty boring and also very ineffective. I remember they tried to do a couple activities and they just fell flat on their face. Like they tried to do ice skating or something and nothing came of that. A bunch of other stuff they tried to do, nothing ever came of. And then they couldn't even really organize themselves very well in the meetings, and it was a mess. But I kind of joined it for the same reason. I like psychology a little bit, and I like the topic, and I thought that would be an interesting club to talk about psychological concepts. And it was okay when people actually showed up the first couple meetings, but then it got pretty bad when no one showed up.
Yeah, I find that's been most of my experience with clubs on college. That's it.
Yeah, I think so. I think for the most part, especially those smaller colleges. Even with a chess club, there was definitely dwindling turnout as time went on. But at least with chess club, it's not really awkward if only 4 people show up because you can still play chess. So, the purpose of the club still remains, even if there's less people. As long as there's not one, you're usually good. So after that, we both ended up being RAs, and that was definitely interesting. I think we were both there for 2 semesters, 2 semesters, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What do you think about that looking back? Because didn't you go on to be an RA later too?
No, I only lived on campus at FLCC. I'm just a commuter student now.
Okay.
Being an RA, it was very mixed. It was a great experience for my resume and my career. But man, I'll be honest, it was pretty freaking miserable. It was pretty miserable in a lot of aspects.
Would you say that the aspects in which it was miserable were more the people that we had to work with, or were the people that we had to oversee?
For my experience, I think it was a little bit of both. Because there was people I loved as coworkers, and some of them were great, but some of them were actually just genuinely terrible at their jobs. I'm not saying they were terrible people, but I felt like we had to clean the scraps of a lot of people. And there was a lot of times I just blatantly saw my coworkers doing things that they shouldn't have been. And it just set a really bad for the rest of us. I don't know if you can attest or agree.
Yeah, I can agree with that definitely to some extent. Some people were incompetent and some people didn't care. Some people you could just tell by the bulletin boards that they made how much they care about the job.
Or some of them were really bad.
Yeah, some of them were bad.
Bulletin, they get scratched up and ruined. Like, come on. You'd spend 2 hours on a board just for someone to run by and like rip off a piece of it.
Yeah, that was another thing is the type of people that are at a community college is usually, they have a higher acceptance rate, and that says really everything you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, remember the cameras being destroyed?
Yeah, the camera, the exit signs.
That was like a nightly experience.
Yeah.
And then all about that, and there's just no information because the cameras are all down.
Yeah, but the exit signs were sad. How many of them were just getting knocked down over and over? It's like they didn't exist because they were never up. By the time somebody put them back up, they were gone the next night.
I know. I feel really bad for the maintenance guys.
But then again, they got paid for it. I think every time they came in, they got paid for it. So they probably weren't too upset.
I don't think weren't they like $100 each?
I think they were 50 or 100, something like that, somewhere between that. I thought it was 50, but it might have been more.
They would say 100. Maybe they over-exaggerated.
Yeah, they probably did. They probably did over-exaggerate. There was something else, too. They said that each door was a couple $1,000 or something. I don't know if that was really true.
They're just trying to justify the price of living there, I guess.
Probably, because that was pretty high. So you also have a very intense interest in fish. In fact, you have a whole YouTube channel on fish. So,
yes, I do.
And so I checked out your YouTube channel real quick. I mean, obviously I've seen it plenty of times before and I've watched a lot of your videos, but real quick before this podcast, I noticed you did a short video about somebody who left garbage out in their fishing hole. Do you want to tell me about that?
Sure. I think it was 2 days ago. Me and one of my friends, we were out ice fishing for pretty much 8 hours, because right now I only have Tuesday, Thursday classes for a couple weeks. So I have a little bit more free time than I usually do as I'm starting my last semester at Rockport. But we were out fishing and we were walking back in just to leave, and we encountered somebody who was standing over a hole and then began to like pack up essentially. And we managed to just walk by the hole and see that the guy left a bunch of garbage. And I'm 90% confident it was him, but I'm going to say there's like a 10% chance he just went to an already cut hole and just fished in it and didn't leave the garbage. We're pretty sure it was him because I was with somebody else.
And was this on a lake?
Yes, it was on Ontario. So yeah, it was on Braddock Bay.
Okay.
You ever heard of it?
No, I haven't heard of that bay specifically. I do know Lake Ontario. So if this was pretty far out, I'm guessing.
His hole wasn't, but we were out like half a mile walking into the car. He was only out like 50 feet. Okay,
because what I was going to say is, what are the chances of someone walking out in a lake and finding a hole that was already there?
It's possible, but
probably not very likely.
Well, everyone's drilling. There's a bunch of people, especially on the weekend, but we walked by it and it wasn't there previously.
Okay.
So we think it was him. Like I said, there is a chance it wasn't, but I tried talking to him. I don't think he was a native speaker. He kind of gave minimal responses.
Yeah. I actually have it right here. Let me play it.
Any luck today? I gotta ask, did you leave your garbage out by that hole, like the worm container?
Huh?
Did you leave garbage out at the hole? Was that you? Like a worm container? Did you leave garbage out? Okay. Maybe it was somebody else, but that's nasty.
Okay, so I gotta ask, because I'm this way too, in some cases, depending on what it is, but what is it about people that are incompetent and lazy that just gets under your skin?
Littering is one of the laziest things ever. My motto was always, I was taught this when I was very young, go to a spot and make it look comparable or even better than when you left it before. I used to be a Boy Scout.
Yes.
So leaving garbage on a lake that's frozen is just terrible, because if that garbage, either it's going to blow away and it's going to end up on the side of the freeway, which is a mess that someone has to clean up and it's just disgusting, or it's going to stay there and get like rained on and frozen over, and when it eventually thaws, it's going to end up on the bottom of the lake, which then interacts directly with the fish that you're trying to catch, and it just mucks up everything down there. So it's a lose-lose situation, and it's something so easy. You just bring like a garbage bag or a plastic bag with you, and you just clean up after yourself.
Right. Yeah, there is something with me too. People, and for me, it's more so people that don't put their cards back. That's another thing. But that and people that, it's even worse when you're driving in a car and you throw something out the window. That to me is just even worse, because it's one thing if you're walking down the street and you don't have somewhere to put it. Even I don't throw stuff on the ground in that case, but some people do, and at least they have a reason, like, well, it won't fit in my pocket. Where am I going to put it if there's no garbage can? But when you're in a car and you throw something out the window, that to me is just a different level of stupidity, because I just don't even have words for it.
It definitely is worse. And the thing is that people get caught doing that all the time, and it's like a $1,000 fine.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
I think they should bump it up to $5,000. Why not? Right? Do you care? You'd be happy with that.
It does get under my skin that people can be that lazy and careless about their environment, and about the fact that, there is order and there's chaos, and those people are successful. Well, that's maybe an assumption I don't want to make, but those people are living in a world where they can, enjoy everything around them because of all the effort that people put into making things orderly. And then there they are, and they're that one small essence of chaos. And it's like, if everyone was like you wouldn't have a world to live in.
Yes, that is a big thing with fishing, is that a lot of people will they'll take too many fish than they're supposed to, or they'll take smaller fish. And in their minds, they're thinking, oh, it doesn't matter, it's one fish. But how you should be thinking is, what if everybody was doing what I'm doing? Taking too many fish, taking too small fish that don't have the chance to reproduce.
Right. And then there's no more left.
Yes, it's kind of flipping that philosophy, I think.
So when did you start to get interested in fish?
I couldn't even fully answer that question because I was so young. I think I started fishing at 3 years old.
Okay.
I can't even for the first time I went, because I was just that little. And it was very simple. It was like my parents and grandpa was helping me set the hook, and I was very little and fishing with worms. So I've always been interested.
As you got older, you started to get you got your own tank, and you started to collect them. And eventually, I remember you told me you had potential ambition to start an aquarium when you were older, right?
Yes, I would definitely consider creating a business revolving around fish, for sure. Whether that be like a specialty fish shop, or maybe even like a full-blown traditional aquarium.
Do you remember when you got your first fish, like your pet fish?
Oh, pet fish. Okay. I believe I was 10 years old, and it was a 20-gallon tank, and it was my fish, but obviously I was kind of young and I didn't fully take care of them, so my dad did most of the maintenance.
Okay.
So I guess
Was that something that you wanted, or was it like a gift and then you just kind of went with it?
it was a gift, but I wanted the gift.
Right. So what was your first fish? Do you remember?
It was a community tank. There was I believe there were guppies and cories and neon tetras, which cories are a little catfish. Guppies,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you know guppies and neon tetras.
Not too well. I've heard of guppies, and I think I can picture them in my head.
They're like the little fish with the fantail, the bright colors, and then neon tetras are like the fish with the blue and the red that are really cheap and common everywhere.
Okay, that's interesting. I remember when I was younger, I was probably 10 or 11 too. I would go over to my grandpa's house on my mom's side, and he would have a fish tank, and it would have different little fish in there, and there was always this one big fish. I think it's the kind that cleans your tank. I don't know what it's called, but it would be huge, and its lips would be like on the side of the glass. What's that called?
A pleco.
Yeah, okay.
Was it like a brownish fish?
Yeah, dark brown, blackish with spots, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
a
that kind of
common
traumatized me as a kid just because it was weird and its mouth was always facing me on the side of the glass. So maybe that's why.
Really?
I think so. I was young. I don't know. I think it was maybe scary to me.
I always thought their mouths were funny and cool looking.
It probably was, but I just thought it was weird when I was younger. But that's when I was younger. I have thought about getting pet fish since then, but the reason that I didn't is I've just heard so many stories of them dying because you don't take care of them right or you don't put them in the right size bowl, and I don't want to be sad when my fish dies. So I ended up getting a snake because they require a little bit less attention and special food and everything. So I just don't want my fish to die. That's really why I haven't gotten any. But there are some that are less, like lower maintenance than others, right?
Yeah, there's a whole list of community fish. I know you mentioned bull. Don't get a bull. Get a bull. Like bulls are bad. Get it like an actual fish.
Well, that's probably reason number one, because some people have a fish bowl with goldfish in it and maybe a plant or something, and then they forget to feed it and it dies.
Well, that in many places in the world is actually considered animal abuse, believe it or not.
Interesting. That is interesting, because that's kind of been, whenever I think of a goldfish, I think of a fish bowl, just because of TV and whatever other ways it's portrayed. So it's interesting that it's not very humane.
Unfortunately, that is an American thing. We just put a fish in a bowl and think it'll do well, and it really doesn't work, especially not goldfish, because they poop a lot. So they have an ammonia buildup, and it's just a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so Americans are disproportionately torturing to fish.
Not all. It's actually gotten a lot better. Like, people are doing more natural setups with live plants, which is always best. And I think it's becoming more common, but we still have a long ways to go.
Well, that's a good takeaway from anyone who's listening, who's considering getting a pet fish. Do not get a fish bowl. Get an actual tank.
Yes, please. Please.
Okay, so at what point did your interest in fish kind of convert over to you deciding to start a YouTube channel on them?
So it was actually 2 years ago about when I started. Maybe a little bit less, but first I just wanted to do aquarium fish because I have aquariums here, and I really just wanted to kind of show off my fish tanks. And that's pretty much what my first 3 videos were, just showcasing my fish. And they really didn't do well. The camera's not great. Like it's the starting video. It was the start of the channel. So they're not amazing by any means.
Sure. And now you have a whole bunch of other types of videos. So you do tutorials on certain fish and how they're better than others and what fish to avoid and how to fish properly without being inhumane to the fish. And you do videos on population and all other sorts of things. So at some point you decided, obviously, to expand your range of topics.
Yeah, I think so. My 4th video, those first 3 were just showcasing. My 4th was actually what I call fish feature, which is essentially just a little series of me talking about a certain fish. And the intent of those videos is to be more informative. The first one I was actually talking about the neon tetras, how to take care of them, care requirements, what size tank to put them in, friendly tank mates they can go with, food, feeding, all that. And I only had like 20 subscribers, so that was the start of me trying to be informative. Really, my value for YouTube is to provide value. And value can come in a multitude of different ways. It can be something that makes you entertained. It could be something funny, humorous, or it could be something that makes you think or is just generally informative. And I like to be more informative. I think kind of your podcast too is a more informative. You like to talk about certain subjects. I like to do that too, just more of a broad category. And I think for me, I like to do that. Obviously, I have the monetization aspect now, so, making the money is always amazing, but I like to provide value.
I do think that thing you said about providing value is important, especially for people that are trying to make money on the internet, because there are a lot of people I've noticed that try to do things that aren't really providing any value. For example, wholesaling, and this is something I tried to do at first. And if you do it right, it can work. But some people try to go online and buy something cheap from a wholesaler or from a brand, and then they try to resell it on Amazon for a slightly higher price than what they bought it for. But the problem is, if there's other people doing that, then there's no additional value that you're providing by selling that product. And it's the same thing with affiliate marketing. There's something people do online where they generate a link to a product, and when somebody clicks their link, it gives the person a slight discount. So that is value, except for the fact that you're not providing more value than the next person who has that same affiliate link. So I think there's a lot of people that try to make money, and they're not actually creating original content or doing something that, like you said, gives any informative or entertaining value. It's not going to really build them a brand or a business, and it's not going to get them anywhere financially.
Yeah, if you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, that's not a brand. Or at least that's not a good brand. That's just almost a clone, if you will.
Yes. And it's going to get interesting with AI too, because that's going to make you question if something new with AI is really providing value, or if it's just taking value that was already there and making it more accessible, which I guess is still kind of providing value. But AI is definitely going to complicate everything. I think it's going to intrude upon people that are doing stuff, and it's going to come in and kind of crowd the space a little bit. I'm thinking about podcasts specifically, I guess, because right now AI is not at the point where it can replicate authentic human voice very well, but I think it's going to get there. Yeah. And when it does, I think half, if not more, very quickly of podcasts are going to be just AI blabbering on about things.
Yes, I have definitely seen on YouTube there is elements of AI that are coming into certain videos. The one that comes to mind is the AI voice, which I've always found irritating. I don't know about you.
It depends on which voice it is, I guess. Are we talking about like the TikTok one, the male one?
Yeah. Like a lot of there's multiple TikTok ones that are really annoying. I don't have TikTok. I never will download it.
I don't either.
You don't like it.
I haven't had it since 2020.
Good for you. I know we're both pretty similar on that front, but on YouTube, I've noticed there's a lot of AI thumbnails and there's a lot of AI voice. And sometimes there's AI scripts, and you can very easily tell when it's an AI script because it loops around. It's sometimes nonsensical, and it doesn't really get to a point. It's kind of wishy-washy is the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, I can understand that. In fact, in my experience in communicating with AI, I've noticed sometimes it's not very good at being concise, and sometimes it just goes on tangents. Now, in another area of the internet that's taken over, and this doesn't really have anything to do with YouTube or podcasts, but it's just normal articles and websites. So the other day, me and a coworker were arguing over what the biggest Walmart was, and he looked it up. And like the second website he clicked on, and it said it was a list of the top 10 biggest Walmarts. For number 1, it said it was in Albany, New York. And it said the square footage. And then you scroll down and it has number 2, and it said like Texas and said there are 345 Walmarts in Texas. Number 3, another state, and listed the number of Walmarts in the state. So number 1, it did good, but number 2 and 3, it completely changed the subject of what it was talking about, and you could clearly tell that the whole website was written by AI.
That's interesting. So it went from the one location size to quantity in the state?
That's correct. Number 1, it said the city that the largest Walmart was in, and then for number 2 through 10, it just had the states with the highest amount of Walmarts. And this was ranked number 2 or 3 on Google when you search what is the biggest Walmart.
Well, I don't know if you've seen, Google has the search AI now, and that's the first thing that pops up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not even talking about the Gemini thing. I mean like an actual website.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying that kind of another point of AI.
Gemini is interesting. I'm glad they renamed it from Bard, because that was a horrible name. And I said that...
It was named Bard?
When Google first came out with it, it was called Google Bard.
I did not know that.
B-A-R-D.
That's terrible. I wish
it was bad. Like, whoever did that, it had to be a dare or something. I don't know.
You're probably fired now.
But I tweeted about that even before they renamed it to Gemini. I said, like, who on earth named this thing Google Bard?
Okay. Or it continues to interrupt.
It just tells you everything you need to know about Google, really.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Google, they try to be the leader in AI and that type of thing. And they name their AI program Bard. I mean, DEF what? It's 2 letters away from barf.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad.
Yeah, Google Gemini isn't that good though. Even the responses and stuff, it's not quite there.
Yeah, it's not fully accurate. I actually just scroll past it pretty much every time at this point.
Yeah. I will say one thing that it does well is it tries to pull its information from different websites, but the websites aren't always accurate. So I did notice that Facebook, their Meta AI, that doesn't seem too bad. It's actually pretty good to conversate with. I haven't done it in a while, but you can just put an earphone in and talk back and forth with it, and it's pretty nice.
I don't actually have Facebook, so...
I don't blame you. I don't really use it much anymore, but why did you get rid of Facebook, or did you never have it?
I've never had it. I've only had Snapchat and Instagram, and honestly, I don't really use Instagram. Snapchat, I use it to talk to a couple people. Yeah. Instagram, I just have it. I rarely go on it. There's just a lot of garbage on Instagram. There's a lot of bots on Instagram, too.
There are a lot of bots that follow you and like your first picture, and then you'll go to their page and it has an OnlyFans link in their bio. Have you noticed that, or is it just me?
Yes, there's a lot of other sex bots, too. Being frank, that's just what I call them. But
yeah,
find it art pictures.
What's that?
I don't know why. It's on art pictures.
What about art pictures?
I don't know. The bots, the sex bots, they're on the art pictures for some reason.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I posted them. They flooded the comments, and I had to delete it.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's some activity, even though it's inauthentic activity. But that's another thing about AI is, if I remember correctly, Mark Zuckerberg said something about allowing AI profiles that were like created by Facebook. And these people would send you friend requests and stuff, and they would behave like actual people and send you chats and stuff. So basically just pumping AI into an app where, I don't want to say Facebook is dying, but I don't know why else they would do that, why else they would put AI people in there to, spruce up engagement. But that's kind of weird, the fact that, Facebook would sponsor and endorse and even create AI profiles that just pretend to be real people and comment on posts and stuff. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, I wonder if their engagement or like the viewers is going down. I wouldn't know.
I don't know. This does make for an interesting tangent though about social media. So I was definitely using Facebook a lot back in 2020, mostly for groups, and I've stopped using it nearly as much. I still use it for Marketplace, and I use it for groups a little bit, and use it for a couple people, like you said with Snapchat, or a couple people with me on Messenger that I use that as my form of communication because they don't live in the country and they don't have a phone number that's easy to text them from. So, But other than that, I haven't posted on Facebook since I was probably 11 years old in any serious way. Like I've made a couple posts just about random things like trying to sell a kayak and stuff like that. But I don't really engage on it. I don't watch anybody's stories on there. I don't really look at anyone's posts. So I haven't used that in a while. Instagram, like you, I've had that, but I kind of have stopped using it. In fact, did I tell you that I got rid of my smartphone in December?
I watched the episode you made on it.
Okay, well, if that's the case, you already know quite a bit about it. But I was thinking about, because I've always had this block app on my phone where you can block certain apps, and I would just always find sneaky ways around it, and I just said, I'm just done with this device. I'm just getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, social media for me was just distracting, and having a phone in my pocket all the time that I would take out when I was bored, I don't think it was good for me. So I definitely am happy I got rid of it.
So it's been going well for you.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. It went a little sideways at first because I bought a bar phone, which is like a flip phone except it doesn't flip, and it didn't work because even though it was advertised to be on the 4G network, it really wasn't. And so it couldn't make or receive any calls. And one time I successfully sent a text message to it with my new SIM card inside it, but it took about 3.5 hours for the text message to arrive.
Oh my gosh, wow. Is that all?
Well, that was pretty bad, but I ended up sending it back, and I got a new one, and the new flip phone works pretty well. So,
okay.
I did end up with a flip phone. I didn't want a flip phone. I wanted the bar phone because it looked cooler. It looked a little more professional, but it is what it is. And so far, I just use it for calling, basically, and my alarm clock, and texting a little bit, but not much, because it takes a really long time to text on it. So,
do you call people now to communicate more? Or?
I do. I do call people more frequently, whereas before I would have texted them. And I think that's another benefit of it, is talking to people instead of just texting them. I think it builds your relationships a little bit better. Have you ever gotten into Instagram Reels or anything?
No, I think the closest I've done is YouTube Shorts, and I've made a couple, but most of my shorts are actually kind of not the usual shorts. They're more informative videos about something, and that's nice because I can just spend 30 minutes, kind of get a little touch up on the main points of a certain video, and if I want to learn more, I just go to the actual main video. So, and I only usually watch one or two, so I don't have a problem with doom scrolling per se.
Okay, so you're saying when you watch the YouTube shorts that usually they're linked to a larger video that you can click on it?
Yes, because on YouTube you can actually, I've never done this, so I actually don't really know how to do it, but you can somehow condense one of your larger videos into a short video and kind of use that as almost a promotion tool.
Okay, I didn't know that. That is interesting. And I will say one of the reasons I like watching YouTube Shorts a little bit more than the other things is because YouTube bases its algorithm off of what I already watch in YouTube videos, like the podcasters and political stuff. So it's usually a little bit more aligned with what I like to watch than Instagram is. And you know what really frustrates me? And I don't know why, because I don't have a right to be frustrated by it, but is when coworkers and other people around me are just doom scrolling stuff that's just ridiculous, like people dancing, just video after video after video, and they watch it through the whole thing and they like it, and it's like me just looking over their shoulder like, what are you doing with your life?
I don't get frustrated. If people want to waste their time, they are more than welcome to. At the end of the day, if I am not wasting my time and they are, there's more of a chance for me to be successful. I guess that's my philosophy. I can't babysit the world. I can just do what I want to do and be successful there. But
Yeah.
I definitely understand where that's coming from, because people will waste hours of their time doing that.
Yeah, it just makes me sad for them. And I did have TikTok, like I said, for a little bit of time in 2020. And I think after I spent like an entire day on it at once, like with breaks to get water and go to the bathroom, and that's about it. That's when I was like, okay, I'm getting rid of this and I'm not getting it back on my phone.
It seems like you can have a bit of an addictive personality to something. And I think everybody has something where they're like that, but I guess yours is like that short form social media content.
Yeah, I would say a lot of people are like that. Now, I will say that after that day, I've never spent as much time on it at once.
That's good.
I wouldn't really say I'm addicted, or I was addicted any more than the average person would be, but I think that I'm just a little bit more conscious of that. I'll still call it an addiction, because I do think it is somewhat of an addiction, but I think I was just more conscious of it and more appalled by it than most other people are, and so that's why it seems a little bit more evident with me, is because I mention it more. Not necessarily because it's worse than the average person, but just because I hate it more, and so I talk about it a little bit more.
Okay.
I see people on social media all the time just scrolling stuff, and I guess you could call it an addiction.
I think it technically is an addiction. I've never felt I've been addicted to it. I'm on YouTube more, as you can probably tell, but even then, I definitely get what I need to get done before I do what I want to do, or watch YouTube or all that.
Yeah, I think based on when I knew you, I think that's true, and I think that I'm not as restrained in that way. I typically do the things that I want to before the things that I need to, and that's definitely an issue that I constantly try to improve. And I think most people that I've seen anyway are more like me in that regard. So I think you have a little bit of a talent there that you can focus your attention where it needs to be.
I definitely try, but everyone has something that they wish they could improve. No one's perfect at the end of the day. Everyone has their vices, and That is true. On the topic of my podcast, that kind of is one of the reasons that I started it. So one of the reasons was I wanted to improve my speaking skills a little bit, and both public speaking and articulative ability, because like I said in the intro of my podcast, I do participate in a couple debate clubs, and the thing about that is it's good for that, but you also can't talk about whatever you want. You just have to talk about whatever they are dictating the topic will be. So it's more fun to do this, and it's also allows for some interesting conversations like the one we're having now, which I think is it's interesting because you don't always get to compare different perspectives on things when you're just going through life normally, unless you're in a situation where you're just casually talking to people around you, but usually it's not intentional, and you don't always get to select the people you're talking to, which means usually they're not very intelligent, at least from my findings. If you're talking to somebody just that you meet on the street or one of your coworkers, usually you have a limited selection pool. Yes, I understand that point.
Personal branding was another thing that I was interested in. I would say that one of the people I look up to in terms of this would be Grant Cardone. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he's in real estate.
Is that the one you mentioned for like your top business podcast?
Yes. What actually was it? I think it was. I think it was. Yeah, he talks about real estate and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But he's interesting to me because he started his whole online presence at age like mid 40s or 50s or something. And I think to grow to the extent that he has in the amount of time that he did and at the age that he was at, I think that's pretty impressive. And a lot of his income, I guarantee, is based on his success with personal branding as opposed to just his businesses. I think that his popularity has kind of had a trickle-down effect on people signing up for all his lessons and courses and stuff and buying his books. So I think I think there's something to be said about that aspect of it. So I don't have any specific goal in terms of what I plan to monetize yet, but I think that if you start early and you kind of build a little bit of an audience, I think that has the potential to help you later on, even if you don't know what it is you're going to be selling or offering later on.
Absolutely. It's that value I was talking about earlier. That guy must have an incredible amount of value in whatever he's saying for that many people to support him and want to take his courses and all that. So
yeah,
that guy's doing it right. Like, that guy has the concept of value down.
Definitely. And his value is both in informative, because it's the way that he does things and the strategy that he uses to buy real estate and to do sales. So that's both an informative value, but also he's very, I don't want to say entertaining, captivating. He's very captivating in the way that he talks and the way that he negotiates and all that. And so in that way, he is kind of entertaining, I guess. And so it's the dual values that he provides there that makes him interesting, I think. Do you have any long-term plans with your YouTube channel?
I'd love to keep growing it, and really, it's been very successful. I believe we've been growing at a faster rate than I ever have, except in the little bit in the summer. Summer was a bit of a hot spot there, but it's been very steady. We've been growing very well, and really, I'd love to keep growing it and maybe even treat it like a business in the future and get a team with me behind it. Because right now, I'm doing quite literally everything. I make the thumbnails, I make the scripts, I do the voiceovers, I do all the editing. I throw in where I want to throw a joke in, because one of my things is I like to put a little bit of humor in my videos, because not a lot of people do that, especially in the aquarium section. Yes. Not a lot of aquarium YouTubers do that. Most of them are just kind of talking about the fish, which is fine, but I wanted to kind of capitalize on a niche, I suppose.
Yeah, and I will say that I've watched a couple of your videos, and you do a pretty good job at putting humor in there, because I've been laughing pretty hard at some of your comments, mostly about either people that don't know what they're doing or people that are stupid, but you make sure to point them out when they exist.
Thank you. Yes, I think I showed you the snagging video, and you liked that one a lot. Which was that was a rant video. Usually I'm more proper. I try to be informative. I try to go on like a script. That one was just a giant rant video.
In the Atlantic salmon run, 90 to 95% of these fish die. And it's all worth it for the chance for their offspring to come into this world. Or it would have been if some fat, lung cancer-filled, barely employed salmon snagger didn't end up stabbing them in the back with a giant hook.
That's one of my favorite videos I've ever made.
Let's see, was that the one where they made a comment about killing all the fish or something like that, or was that a different one?
Well, that was a different rant video.
And it's not even them catching them unintentionally. No, he or she scoops up these fish with a net on purpose with the intent to just kill them. And I don't know, but to me this just seems like some unhappy jagoff who can't satisfy his wife, letting out his pent-up frustration on a fish.
That one too, that was a really bad bit. That guy was horrible. Oh my gosh, that's actually the worst comment I've ever received. And it wasn't even targeting me, like your content sucks and you're stupid. But the fact, I don't like these fish because they eat another kind of fish, so I kill them all and throw them up to the buzzards. It was bad.
And that's another thing that I think I think you do well, is responding to feedback, and obviously the fact that you made an entire video, albeit the fact that it wasn't a very positive video, but you made an entire video about that guy's comment. I bet he at least appreciated that you made the time to insult him.
This one is going to be a bit different, as I'm pretty much just reacting to a horrid comment. So I'll pretty much be talking about how this comment encapsulates the decay of fishing here in the U.S.
I don't think he ever watched it, but I think that's one of the biggest differences between podcasting and YouTube, because I know you kind of mentioned I'm not huge on podcasting. In fact, your podcast is the only one I watch. But you mentioned that like a comment on a podcast is a lot more difficult than a YouTube video, because a YouTube video, you can just comment on every single one. You can make multiple comments. Yeah,
and I will agree with that. On YouTube, you can comment, honestly, as much as you want on every single video. Whereas in a podcast, the best you can do really, Well, first of all, the technical structure of a podcast is it's an RSS feed, so it's a file that originates from a host somewhere, and then there's these different podcast players that pick up that feed and turn it into something that is listenable. So some of those podcast players would be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts before its untimely death, and a couple other ones. But you can't really comment on each episode. The best you can do is, in some cases, you can leave a review on the whole podcast itself, which in terms of YouTube, it would be comparable to just leaving a review on the channel. So there's not really that much interaction unless you are asking for emails and that sort of thing, like asking for people to write you emails, which I've noticed some podcasters do, but it's definitely not as easy or as intuitive as just leaving a comment on a YouTube video. So I think it would be nice if that was kind of implemented, at least by some players, maybe Spotify or something, so at least some places could do that. I can't imagine there being too many downsides. I mean, I'm sure there would be some negative comments and stuff, but that's the price of putting your content out on the internet.
Yes, I've noticed. Well, first off, you could make the best video or the best podcast the world's ever seen, and someone's not going to like it. You can't make everybody happy. It's impossible.
Right.
You just have to go into niche and make that niche happy, and hopefully that niche grows. But kind of regarding comments, I've always found there's kind of three sections of comments. There's good comments, which are people that are just saying, oh, I love the video, or I love the podcast, talking about this part, this was really funny, so-and-so. There's bad, which is just people saying, oh, this sucks, you're an idiot, you're wrong. And then there's that. But then there's like kind of the other side of bad, which is constructive criticism, which I actually do factor. The bad comments you just ignore. The constructive criticism is like, I don't really like how you did this. Maybe you could have done this better, or something like that. And that's an appropriate response. So I will actually talk to those people. And, I think that's the mature thing to do.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting. I wonder if there's a role out there where their only job is to study the mentality of people that only leave negative comments online. Because I guarantee
they say that people are like 3 times more inclined to leave a negative review than a positive one.
I think most people are just miserable. I don't have any other explanation. I really don't.
I could definitely see it. They just want to kind of project a lot of their insecurities of their own life.
Yeah, I don't know what else. I mean, now don't get me wrong. Some things are worthy of criticism, but for the people that leave a negative review on everything that they come into contact with, that's a different story. So I know the first couple videos you did, like you said, your camera wasn't that great, and it's same with mine in terms of equipment. Would you say that as you started to get a little bit more professional with the quality of videos that you put out, that the equipment, well, first of all, what upgrades did you have in equipment? And second of all, how much more difficult was the process of recording and publishing?
I think at the start, I was using iMovie to edit my videos, and pretty much it was a compilation of what I was recording, putting it together. And I think most of these videos aren't very great. There's actually 1 or 2 of them that I still like to this day. But really upgraded when I got a GoPro. I got a GoPro Hero 10, and I was able to do a lot more things with that. I have a bunch of accessories like a camera strap that goes on my head or my chest. I have a selfie stick, and I can do a lot more things with that. But I think, honestly, the biggest upgrade was a lot of the software I downloaded. I downloaded actual editing software that cost me money, and I could also download the software that allowed me to download clips from YouTube, so I could utilize kind of 10-second clips, avoiding copyright, obviously, and following all the copyright rules.
Right.
But I think for me, it's the big step that got me more views and really got me where I am. Because my first really big video was a top 10 list. And it was the top 10 best community fish tanks. This is kind of going back to the aquarium stuff.
Right.
I made that 10 months ago, and that utilized that software. I downloaded clips of these fish, and I put them in a top 10 list. I used that editing software to put it all together. and it has like 42,000 views at the moment, which isn't crazy, but it's really another big change, I'd say, is doing weekly uploads. I had a set schedule. People really liked that, and I was able to put out more content than just randomly, sporadically putting it. I noticed I got a lot more subscribers then.
Yeah, I think part of that is YouTube's algorithm, I believe. If you put videos out on a regular basis, I think it promotes you a little bit more. And I've noticed the same thing with podcasts when it comes to Apple Podcasts, is I think they will put you a little bit higher up on their lists if you are regular in your publishing of videos.
Yes, and then, I mean, the real reason I did it is so that my subscribers could know when I'm going up. I post every Saturday at 8 a.m., and my subscribers watching this will know that, because I'll plug this in my videos in my community section, so hopefully it gets some traffic. But
when
when
you bought your GoPro, was that what you had on the other day when you asked that guy about the garbage?
Yes, I had my chest mount on.
That's pretty cool. I've actually wanted to get one of those, and I wish I had it for... Did I tell you about that drone incident in the water park?
Yes, I remember that.
I really wish I had a camera strapped to my chest for that, because I guarantee you that court case would have gone differently if I had the video proof of exactly what he said to me, that I'm basically not getting it back. If I had that video, I think that would have turned out differently. But yeah, I had just for people listening that have no idea what I'm talking about, I had a drone that got lost in a water park, and they refused to give it back to me. I ended up suing them, and I lost the court case. But I wish I had that video evidence. And a GoPro is a very, very good way of also getting good content for YouTube and whatnot. I have an Insta360 that I have for my motorcycle, but I haven't used it that much. And I have a little stand that goes on the back. It's one of those things, like, it can get a 360 view of everything around it. So it's pretty cool, but it's not really great for YouTube, but it's great for shorts and stuff, although I haven't used it that much. In terms of software, what software specifically did you download that made a difference on your quality?
I use an editing software called VideoPad, I believe, and it just costs, it's probably one of the cheaper ones, honestly, because it costs $60 for a lifetime. But I guess I never have to pay for it again.
Right.
And I don't remember the name of like the video downloading software. I used to use the free version because I'd get like 30 clips a day for free, and I was plenty fine with that. But they lowered it to 10, and when they lowered it to 10, I couldn't reliably do that anymore, so I had to purchase the full version, but that was only $20.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed in a lot of your videos you have some cool little fish clips that accompany your speaking, and I think that helps keep people engaged.
Yeah, it definitely. For copyright reasons, I keep the clips below 10 seconds, but I try to kind of go through the clips a little faster, I suppose, to kind of, I don't know, keep the video going, keep different angles, different videos up to keep viewer engagement up, because if you hold on the same clip for a very long time, people don't really like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Would you say that there was a pretty substantial learning curve for when you had to learn how to use the software and stuff, and when you had to learn how to really get better at making good videos?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still not fully there. I'm not a very technologically gifted person. I think you know that.
I mean, when you say you think I know that, I wouldn't say that I've noticed that too much, so I'll give you that. But I can certainly take your word for it. But you seem to, be okay. I mean, I know people that are worse for sure.
Well, I really came into YouTube not knowing how to video edit at all, and that's been a giant curve. But really, the way to learn is by doing. Yes. And obviously, you make mistakes. Like a lot of my older videos, I don't really like. A lot of it because I don't have a microphone, which I do now. But even a lot of the editing, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of bad jokes that I don't like anymore. But you can do it, You got to make those mistakes to learn, all right, we're not going to do that again. All right, I'll fix that. And you kind of do these things, and you get more intensive edits, and you learn every time. I do very basic editing. I put clips together. I'll do like a funny green screen explosion, or I'll download a funny sound and, make it humorous. I mean, I actually did this last night. I learned how to make an image transparent and then slowly kind of overlap another image, which I've never done before. There's always stuff I'm learning.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I kind of know how to video edit a little bit, mostly from high school. I took this class called digital media production, and I did a couple things like that. One time, I would say the fanciest thing that I've done in terms of video editing was take one clip. I think it was of me riding in an office chair, or when I say riding, like I pushed myself across the room and was just coasting in an office chair. I took that and I put it over top of me riding on my hoverboard, but I put me riding on my hoverboard upside down, and like the office chair thing was transparent over top of the hoverboard video. So it wasn't a transparent picture over a video. It was a transparent video over another video. So like I made the whole background transparent like a green screen. And it looks weird because obviously you can just imagine how weird it looks. But that was the thing that I brag about from high school, is that was some fanciest thing I've done. But I did learn a little bit about video editing, but there's so many components. And I used Adobe Premiere, and there's a couple other softwares that you can do it too, and you use your own. But there are a lot of buttons and a lot of ways to mess things up, and a lot of things that you have to remember what sequence to do it in. And it's just not something I'm too excited to learn personally. I do have a couple people from the Philippines that made me some good YouTube videos, and I am very impressed with them. I'll probably keep them around. They usually work for around $3 an hour, and it's pretty nice to have them. So when you were saying that you might build out a team at some point, that's probably a good place to start. When you think about a team, like what are the positions that you think you would want to add first?
I guess it depends. For me, it's what elements of the video are less enjoyable than others. And I think that's kind of one of the topics we wanted to talk about. But for me, I like doing the thumbnails. I am obviously going to keep doing the voiceovers. I'm not getting somebody else, or I'm not doing an AI thing. Similar to you, I like how my voice has kind of become more proper, and it helps my voice out a lot. I think people even notice it in personal life. Like, I think it's helping my critical thinking and speaking skills a lot. Yes. And I like making the thumbs because it's kind of like making art. And I do a lot of fun, goofy things with them. But for me, the editing is the most time consuming and really the biggest limit to what I have right now. Like, that's the reason I can only do a video a week, because I'm in school and I have to get a video out and I have to edit it. So I think for sure the first thing I do is hire some editors, for sure.
I would have to agree with you too that you should keep your voice in the videos. I think that's like we were saying before, in the personal branding aspect, I think that's a big part of it. I don't think that's a part that you want to remove from the equation. But video editing is definitely something that you can outsource. And there's this website called onlinejobs.ph, and I think they make you pay like $60 a month to use it. But basically, you go on there and you can see a bunch of job candidates, usually working for between $2 an hour to $6 an hour. But if you want to do that, we'll have to talk about that later, because you don't even have to go through that. I already have a bunch of email addresses of people that are decent at editing that might be able to help you out. But it also depends, I guess, on how much you're making from the YouTube revenue and if it'll be worth it.
Yeah, I definitely think I want to wait a while, but I'd love to hear kind of some resources you have in the future.
Sounds good. Now, in terms of what we enjoy about it, I know you enjoy doing the thumbnails and you enjoy talking. What else do you think, besides just the positive feedback that you get from people? What about the process itself do you like?
I guess I should start with like what my process usually is, right?
Yeah.
So usually I either make the thumbnails well before I make the videos, or I do the script first. And the script, I literally just do it on my notes on my computer. And that's about it. I obviously do a lot of research and time. I wrote a script before coming on here, but that takes about an hour, usually sometimes 2 if it's a longer video or if it's a more research intensive one. But I do like doing that. I would never outsource that to somebody, or I'd never turn that into an AI program. So I actually like doing that because it gives me a knowledge on the subject before I start talking about the subject. And I think that helps with kind of even just going through and talking about it in the video.
Yeah, I would agree. When you know what you're talking about before you start talking about it, at a very minimum, it helps you to be more enthusiastic about what you're talking about and not sound like an idiot by mispronouncing things and stuff like that.
And that happens. I've made mistakes. I accidentally called Europe a country one time.
Okay.
And that's embarrassing. But it happens. You can't be perfect, and sometimes you just miss things in the editing process.
Yeah, I'm sure I've done stuff like that. Probably I haven't even caught some of it, so who knows?
I know it's not a country, but I guess I was talking about it in, I think, my glowfish video, why I don't like glowfish, and I was just listing out countries, and I included Europe there. So that's yeah. It was a mistake. It is pretty funny.
I don't know how good you are with geography, and like you said, that was a mistake. But there are some people that are really, really bad at geography, and it's just funny. People that don't know, if Africa is a continent, or they point to Africa, they point to Mexico. It's like, come on.
Yeah, U.S. stereotype. Did you know that? That's what the rest of the world thinks of us.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's kind of sadly true. Like, there are not many people that you meet on the street that can point out even states. I mean, I was with my coworker yesterday, and so I work for Frontier Airlines at the airport, and they have these little coloring pages up at the gate for kids and stuff to play with. One of them was a map of the United States, and I took it down to our office, and I pointed at New York, and I said, or no, this wasn't the first one I said. First I said, I'm going to point at these, and let's see if you can name some states. He was like, okay. And he couldn't name any of them. I pointed at New York, and he got it right. He said New York, but it took him about 3 seconds. And we live in New York.
We live.
And it's just...
That's pretty bad.
It is sad. And he's 27 years old, too. But it is what it is.
I think we went on a tangent. We were talking about
talking about the process.
Okay. So I do the script. Sometimes I do the thumbnail. Sometimes I do the thumbnail last. It doesn't really matter too much. But then after the script, I do the voiceover, and then it's the editing. And then, kind of after the video's posted, a lot of responding to comments and posting kind of little touch-ups, I guess, or in just general community engagement, if you will.
Right.
And I think the community engagement is my favorite part. I really do.
I do agree that it's a different type of feeling to be engaged or to be interacting with people about something that came from you. So I have a lot of, I've commented on a lot of YouTube videos, but the YouTube video that I love to comment on the most is one that actually has me in it talking. And I don't know how to describe it, but you're so much more involved and you care about it a lot more when the whole topic of what you guys discussing is something that you put a lot of time into to produce.
Yes.
So when you make a video, let's say you have a script, like how long does it take you to edit each video? Like an hour?
Oh, editing takes a long time.
Oh.
It could take like 5 or 6 hours.
Because you have all the little clips and stuff you put in there, and you have to bring in the sound effects at the right time and everything.
Yep. Yeah, so I'd say that's definitely the most time-intensive part. It's not my favorite part. I like making the jokes, although those jokes are, in fact, the longest. They take a long time to perfect and kind of create. But I think it kind of motivates me. It's funny. If I don't laugh at my own joke, I don't put it in the video.
It's also... the thing that makes your jokes so funny, in my opinion, is you kind of say it in a voice or a tone of voice that sounds somewhat serious.
If some fat, lung cancer filled, barely employed...
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, there's an element of surprise. Sometimes they just appear and people think that's... do you see them coming sometimes or no?
No, I really don't. I really don't.
And I think that's an element that I don't really get to see because obviously I'm making a so I don't really get to see. I know when they're coming, but I've had a lot of people. You know what? It keeps engagement up. It surprises somebody. They like it. It's funny. You know?
I like that too. No, I really don't know when to expect it. And even like when you're on the exact sentence where it's going to happen, but before you get to the joke itself, I don't expect it because your tone of voice is the same. And then just nonchalantly you call somebody an idiot or a moron or something. I just start laughing.
I only call people that when it's deserved, like when they're killing fish or doing something bad. I don't throw that around lightly.
For sure, you don't insult everyone for sure, but there are definitely some people, like the types of people we were talking about before, that leave garbage everywhere that probably deserve the title.
They absolutely do.
So for my podcasting process, I usually start just with a concept, and usually I'll think of the title first. I'll think of the title of the episode, and I'll make the description just so that I kind of have an idea in my head of what. And when I say description, it's like the part right below the title that tells everyone else what it is. And that way I know what I'm advertising right off the bat, so I can kind of have in my mind like how I should actually be talking in order to make it fit that title and description. So usually I think of those two things before I record the episode, as opposed to doing the episode first and then trying to make a description that matches it. I do that just to kind of be intentional about what I'm putting out there. But then right after I do the title and description, I usually just start recording. I'll pull up Audacity, which is the recording software that I use, and I'll just go through and record the whole thing. Sometimes if I have lapses in memory or if I can't think about what to say next, I'll just pause it and then start it back up a couple seconds later. And I'll do that, and then once I'm done with the episode, it'll take me usually 1 to 1.5 times as long to edit the episode as it did to record it. And that's because usually I have to go through and listen to it and cut out pauses and cut out some other stuff and cut out stuff that sometimes doesn't make sense. Or if I have a guest, I think I told you, one of my other guests, one of the things he said was a little out there on a political topic, so I was like, snip. So sometimes I'll do recording for that type of stuff or editing for that.
Yeah, a little bit of censorship.
Yeah, some censorship.
Hopefully you don't have to do that with me.
I don't think so. I think we're good so far. You haven't said anything that deserves to be placed underground yet.
Good.
But we still have plenty of time.
That's true. I could start saying things if you want.
It's up to you. We'll see how bad it is, and we'll see if my censorship has to come in. But yeah, like I said, usually it takes, I would say, anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to edit it. And I don't always edit it right after I record. In fact, usually I don't, because I've already had enough of it for that day. So I'll come back later and I'll edit it later. And then after that,
I usually don't do it all in one day either.
Yeah, I mean, it would take up an entire day probably for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just wouldn't make sense. After that, it's pretty easy. I just upload it usually and put the title in, put the description in, and you're about done. Because I don't have to do thumbnails or anything. Everything is just the same thumbnail as the podcast thumbnail. Which
I like the podcast thumbnail, by the way. I actually do quite like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I started off with a more basic version, and I think I updated you too when I changed it. But I don't know, it just looked a little bit off, just the spacing of it. So I changed it up, and I forget how I came up with the yellow circle. I think I was just playing with shapes in the Google Drawings website, which is what I use for everything. Logos, all my logos I've made with Google Drawings. It's like Google Slides, but a little bit different. And yeah, I guess I put that yellow circle in there to fill up space, and it's kind of stuck. So I've kept that as my podcast cover art. I think it looks pretty good.
I don't think you can get rid of it. I think that's like part of the brand at this point, you know?
Yeah, I do. I have debated putting myself in there somewhere. And if you go to my website, I think you have to be on the mobile screen for it to work well. Or wait, no. I'm lying. It was an Instagram story that I put up, not my website, where I kind of overlaid the logo over top of that picture I have of me. But I don't know if I want to replace the podcast cover art with that or not. Probably not, because like you said, I do like the current one a little bit.
I'd say at least keep it for a while. See how you do.
I do plan on it. in terms of my process, that's about it. Sometimes I will write not a script, but like an outline beforehand, so that if I get distracted, I can kind of put myself back on track. But other than that, I don't really do a script. I think that me rambling on about stuff is kind of why people listen.
Well, I think that's one of the differences. Like a podcast is more long formed content, and I think you can afford to do that in a podcast. Whereas in one of my videos, if I started rambling on, it'd just take up time. It'd be more things for me to edit, and it wouldn't really contribute to the point of the video. And that's where that value loses off, you know?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think also it's a lot easier, and just speaking from personal experience, it's a lot easier for me to leave a YouTube video than to leave a podcast, because usually if I'm on YouTube, I already feel guilty enough as it is that I'm on YouTube watching something instead of being productive. And so if the YouTube video just itself makes me feel like I shouldn't be wasting my time on it, then I'm more likely to leave either YouTube altogether or just find a new video, because it's easier. Usually I'm actively watching it and I have the mouse in my hand and I can easily click away from it. Whereas if I'm listening to a podcast, chances are I'm either working or driving or something like that, and it's not usually very convenient for me to leave. Even ads on podcast episodes, I'll usually suffer through the ads without even trying to skip them, just because either my phone isn't within easy reach or I'm listening on a speaker or something. I just don't feel like skipping it. So I do think you have a little bit more leniency to talk about, or to not have to worry as much about retention in a podcast as you would have to in a YouTube video.
Yes, for sure, because there's so many different videos out there. Someone can just get bored and leave. Like 30% of the audience, no matter how good the video, is going to leave in the first 30 seconds. That's just how it is.
Yeah. It's called I forget what it's called. Some word and then retention, but there's a term for it. The same applies to podcasts too. And your goal is to try to increase the percentage of people that completion rate. That's what it's thinking of. Try to increase your completion rate, the number of people that actually listen to the whole thing.
Yeah. And YouTube, that's part of the algorithm. If people watch your video all the way through, it gets promoted more. If people watch 10 seconds and leave, it gets promoted less.
Yep, that's true. And with podcasts, it's hard to measure that. For the actual companies that host, like Spotify and Apple, the places that are podcast players, it's hard for them to really measure that, because when somebody clicks on the episode, it downloads the MP3 file onto their device, and then for the most part, I don't really think they have a good way of knowing how much of it you get through, if I'm not mistaken. At least some of them don't. But there are a lot of things that YouTube does better in terms of analyzing listenership and who's actually watching the videos than podcasts are able to do. And I have some statistics on the podcasts, but it is limited because it doesn't, like, podcasts are decentralized, and that's both an inconvenience, like we were talking about with the comments, but I guess it's a little bit better in some ways because you don't have to worry about the censorship aspect of it. Not that you personally probably have to deal with that with fish. There's really not many government people probably looking to censor your fish videos, but if you're talking about stuff that's political or health related, anything like that, everyone on YouTube has to worry about dodging the things that'll get them taken down and stuff. So that's not really as much of a consideration on podcasts, because you host the feed. I mean, you can have it on your own website, the RSS feed, and nobody can take that down. If one player takes down your podcast, like Spotify, then people can still listen to it somewhere else. And if all of them take it down, then they can still listen to they can still listen to it on an offline app or something that just parses the RSS feed. So that's like a decentralized way of communicating with people. And I do like it for that reason. And I hope that podcasts don't go away for that reason.
I doubt podcasts are going away. There's so many different topics, and I think they have a place in the world of online entertainment. I listen to them too when I'm driving. I listen to yours. Yours is the only podcast I listen to.
Well, I appreciate that. When I say podcasts going away, I doubt that the audio entertainment, like part of it, as a whole will go away. But when I say podcasts, I guess I mean the technical format that it currently exists in, where it's a file hosted online that then gets distributed to all these other platforms. Because it's like cryptocurrency in a sense that it's decentralized, and that people can't force you to take it down. Whereas YouTube, I love YouTube, but it's got a monopoly over all the videos basically. And there are some people, like I think Trump uses this other Rumble or something like that, where he puts all his YouTube videos on, but nobody really uses that. So there are alternatives, but they're not really popular. So YouTube has an effective monopoly on everything as far as videos are concerned. But when it comes to podcasts, I do like the current infrastructure where it's decentralized and you can listen to it through any player that you want. And I do have a feeling that over the next couple years that people are going to try to start replacing that with a different model that's, more censored. And I hope that's not the case.
I misinterpreted what you're saying, but yes, I get what you're saying.
That is interesting, too, as far as X, what used to be Twitter. That's kind of like comparable to YouTube in the sense that it's all controlled by one company. But after Elon Musk bought Twitter, there was a new alternative to it. I think it was called Mastodon. And I haven't got into it, but I do find it interesting. Basically, it's like Twitter, but it's decentralized. So you can have your own profile hosted on your domain, and then you all can respond to each other, but it's not really through a company like Twitter. It's through your own web host or something. But it looks like Twitter. Have you heard of that?
No, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, probably because it's not very popular and not many people care about it. And the only reason it exists is because there were liberals that were mad that Elon Musk bought TikTok, or not TikTok, Twitter. But he might buy TikTok. I don't know if he will, but Trump says that he wants part ownership of TikTok, and he'll sell the other half to somebody in the United States, and that's the only way they'll stay on.
Interesting.
Because Congress passed a law to ban TikTok. I'm sure you knew that it went off, what was it, January 19th or something?
I think it went off for like 30 minutes. That's what everyone was saying.
Yeah, something like that. And then they went right back online.
Yeah, it was like nothing. It was like a giant publicity anything. I have no idea what that was about. I don't really care too much because I don't have it, but... Yeah,
I thought it was interesting. A lot of people have businesses and stuff that are exclusively reliant on TikTok, kind of like your channel is reliant on YouTube. So it was interesting for all those people. I'm sure they were a little bit terrified that their business was.
Oh yeah.
And that's one reason too that I personally don't like putting all of my attention or all of my effort into one social media platform like Instagram or Twitter. I like to kind of spread it out. Even with LinkedIn, I recently took all my work history and stuff and put it on my website. So I still have LinkedIn, but I'm trying to... And with Instagram, I took all my pictures and I put them on my website too. So I'm trying to kind of make it so that if one of those were to just die, it would not affect my life as much.
That is quite smart.
It's hard to do with YouTube, though. YouTube is different.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. Like, what other video, besides the one you mentioned, what other video platforms are there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are a bunch, but they're very, very low users and not worth putting your videos on.
Yeah.
I think it's called Rumble. That's the one that I'm thinking of. But
yeah.
Nobody uses it, though. But the thing is, if YouTube actually went down, which I don't think that would ever happen, then everybody would find an alternative. But that's not the situation that I think is more likely. The situation that's more likely would be they just ban you individually, in which case nobody else would move because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to think about how certain companies have control over products like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say something I like about, I guess specifically your podcast, but I'm sure there's a lot of other podcasts out there that do it, is that you can just kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about in kind of a subject matter. So I know you've talked about bikes, you've talked about your job, We've talked about what to do with junk. With my brand, it's very much been fish and nature heavy. I've done some other videos. I categorize them as miscellaneous, but predominantly it's fish. And I feel there's stuff I want to do outside of fish, but I feel like I'd have to grow and make, a second channel.
Yeah.
You ever heard of those on YouTube? Where people kind of just do whatever they want. And I definitely can't do that by myself, but it's something I admire about your podcast. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, and I thought about that a little bit when I first started the podcast as to how limited I wanted to make my scope of topics. And I started the podcast with the idea of my topic being how obstacles are usually figments of someone's imagination and how they're usually easily overcomable, and how I would kind of be sharing some of my experiences as living proof that they are overcomable. And I guess some of my other episodes maybe fall into that if people are listening along with my life and kind of putting the whole thing together as a whole. But unless you really have that bigger picture, it's not easy to see how some of my episodes fit into that original topic. So that's kind of why in my very first episode I made a disclaimer that some of my episodes are going to be just whatever I want to talk about and not necessarily related to the topic, is because I did want to give myself that leeway to be able to go off script and off topic and talk about some different things like that.
And you know what? I think that has a sense of authenticity to it. I think that's just you talking about what you want to talk to or want to talk about. And I think some people will like that.
Yeah, I think so. And it kind of goes back to the personal branding thing too, because I want people to be here more for me than I want them to be here for a specific topic. Because I know a lot of people, when they start a podcast, they feel like they have to do it about a specific topic, and then they make everything about that topic, and then they'll run out of content for it, or they'll run out of knowledge, or they'll just run out of interest for the topic, and then their whole podcast just goes to the wayside because they don't have anything more on that specific topic. Whereas I was kind of following the example of people. Grant Cardone is, again, really the one that comes to mind, because whenever I think of personal branding, he just pops in my head because everybody loves him so much. And he's like the authority on real estate and sales and a couple other things. He's like the top authority in a lot of people's mind. And he can talk about anything and they'll listen to it. So that's kind of what I was aiming for when I started the podcast, was the personal branding aspect of it more than providing value in any one specific topic. Although I didn't want to just call it the Josh Bauer podcast, because a lot of people name the podcast after themselves, and that's more kind of what this is a podcast about me. But I still wanted to kind of mask it behind a certain theme. And so I think I'm kind of balancing doing them both, where I can still talk about what I want, but I can make an argument as to how this still fits in the theme of what my podcast was. And I think it's not always easy to do. I think in your case, you might be better off with a separate channel, just because you have so many fish videos and you like the topic so much. I don't think you're ever going to run out of content for that or have to pivot that channel. But like you said, you want to talk about other stuff too. So it might serve you to have a second, whenever you want to start that up, just have a second channel that's more focused on just your opinions. But it also depends on what your personal branding goals are, if you have any. I don't know if you do.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely something I'd have to think about, and I don't really have a set answer. Not really the personal branding, but like the kind of the side channel.
Right.
All that. That's something I don't have any plans to do anytime. Not in long future for that one.
I know that you don't have your face really in any of your videos. But you're also not anonymous, are you?
I have my face in a couple thumbnails, and I've actually put it in some of my fishing videos where I'm just it's more raw footage recording. I don't do it that often, though. I'd like to do it more. I just need a better camera setup.
Okay. So it's not really, because I know some people that try to keep themselves, like their face out of it and stuff, to keep the brand more about the topic than about them. But I don't really think that's always good, because I think the personal touch definitely has a big benefit to it. And it sounds like that you're trying to do that a little bit more.
I don't. Yes, I kind of going back to that. I don't agree with the whole anonymous thing. I think if it's for more of a like a safety thing, because some communities on YouTube are a lot less safe to upload to. Some people I don't know if you've heard of doxing or any of that.
Yes, I have.
That like I know a lot. That's a lot in the gaming community or whatnot. I hope I don't have to worry about that in the fish community. I really don't. But I guess for that reason, there's a safety to it. But a lot of it just seems to be attention oriented, like the whole face reveal trend.
As far as the doxing, I don't know. I mean, I would think that people in a gaming community are generally more technically inclined and sophisticated than, and no offense, but just in general, than people in the fishing community. I think that people that fish probably, for the most part, aren't the type of people that go home and get on their dual monitor and dox people that they don't like, but there are always exceptions.
Yes.
I think it also requires people having information about you that is sensitive or that you don't want to get out, and as long as you kind of stay on top of that, I don't think it's too much of an issue.
Yeah, I'm not super worried, but I think that's something where some people are worried about. I've listened to a couple people that don't show their face that have mentioned there's a bit of an element of risk of putting your face on the internet, I suppose. People could recognize you. There's an element to that. And I guess that's scary to some people. It's not really scary to me, though.
I would agree. And I think it comes down to a risk analysis, because there's really no benefit of putting your face on the internet in the short term, I don't think. But it depends on what you're trying to do in the long term. So for me, like I said, I'm trying to build that personal branding. And I think that if I were to do that without having my face out there, that it's gonna be difficult to do. And I don't have my face on the podcast cover art, but I do have it on my website if you go to the podcast album, and I put it like right up there as the whole front cover of the website, and it makes me a little bit self-conscious at first, not really anymore because I'm used to it, but I kind of had to fight myself to do that because it was just kind of weird to see my face take up the entire screen of a website. But I think it's kind of necessary if I want to eventually, over the next 10 years or whatever, get to a point where a lot of people know me and where I have some sort of brand recognition and credibility. I think it's important to do earlier on if you want to get to that spot. But it's not necessary, though. As far as personal branding, I think the only reason I care about it is, well, I guess there's two reasons. Number one is monetization. So if a lot of people know who you are and you decide to write a book, it's automatically going to have it's going to have a good landing. It's going to have a large number of sales as soon as you come out with it, because there's people that are going to want to buy that from you because they already like you. So that's one thing. Also, affiliate marketing. You got to keep in mind, like, I mean, I don't think you have any ads on your YouTube channel, do you?
No, I do not. I would love to get some sponsorships, though. That would be awesome. But that's something you just got to wait for a company to reach out to you. And really, that company has to be somewhat related to whatever you're making a video about. So I guess in my case, I think my most likely sponsorship brand would be some kind of aquarium company. But a fishing company, like a lure company or something, could definitely come along and want to sponsor a video or something, which would be really cool. I'd love to try it. I'd love to do it. I've never had that experience before.
I was kind of in the opposite position with my chess sets. I had those chess sets to sell, and for a minute I was looking at different YouTubers and chess, and I actually got a couple of them, mostly on Instagram were the ones that I found, and they did little reels and stuff. None of them actually sold me any chess sets, so I kind of stopped doing it. But if I do grow that a little bit, then I would look a little bit more into doing that with YouTubers. I know there's a lot of YouTubers and stuff that are into chess, so I kind of had some experience searching for people on the other side of that. So there's some monetization benefits of, I guess, having a personal brand later on in your life, and then also credibility if you're trying to get a different job that's in the. For example, if you wanted to start an aquarium, I think it would definitely benefit you to have this channel.
I would fully agree, and I think people would want to come and see it. some of my subscribers.
Right. And people might want to work with you to help you build it if they see that, you're actually somewhat of a knowledgeable person when it comes to fish. It might make the difference between a bank loaning you money or not loaning you money. Just the fact that you have a YouTube channel about fish with thousands of subscribers, which you do, that can definitely make a big difference.
Absolutely. I mean, the subscriber revenue, I could try and crowdfund it from my subscribers. I could donations. There's a lot of possibilities I could do with that for furthering my career goals there.
Now let's see. You have about 6,000 subscribers. What do you think about making some predictions? What do you think that'll be by the end of this year?
I would like for it to be 20,000 by the end of the year. I think that is a fair goal I could do because I get quite a bit of subscribers every month. Maybe depends on the month. It's volatile. It can change, but I could easily. There's been months where I've gotten 1,000 subscribers in a month.
That's pretty good. So yeah, that's 12. You said you started really putting effort into it somewhat recently in terms of like 9-10 months ago, right?
I can pull out. Actually, it's been a year. Wow. It's been a year since I started doing weekly uploads. Wow.
Okay.
Last I checked, it was like 2 months away from it, but wow.
Well, we'll have to circle back in a year and
Mm-hmm.
and see how close we are to that, or maybe we exceeded it by a little bit. But you definitely have some pretty good videos on there. And what's your channel, just for the people that are listening and they want to go check out your videos?
Sure, it's Fishman2114.
And you're still doing business administration, and hopefully you're going to be starting a business of some sort, maybe an aquarium if everything works out and you can put your fish knowledge to work.
I actually did the degree. I have a concentration in business management now, and I'm actually pursuing a marketing minor, which I'll get by the end of the semester. So I've kind of beefed up my academics a little bit too.
Do you have anything that you want to add about your experience with your YouTube channel?
If you want to get into YouTube, I think it's important to remember providing value to your viewers. Nobody's going to watch a video of you just sitting there doing nothing. That provides nothing. You have to do something that people want to watch, and you got to know why people want to watch it. People might think it's funny. People might want to learn something from it. You need to figure that out. And I think another part is figuring out your niche. I kind of mentioned I really started with aquarium, and that's still my main focus. Fishing's definitely grown in popularity, and it's quite rivaling the aquarium market, or the aquarium audience, I should say. But I started off making aquarium videos, and I realized with watching all the other YouTubers that they kind of do the same format, and I wanted to change that up and do a bit of humor. So I think if you want to start, I think it's important to figure out what your value is and how you can be different from what's already out there. And it's more difficult to do in certain communities, and it's easier to do in others. And I think you just need to figure out what you're passionate about and how you can stand out.
I guess one thing I'll add before I wrap it up completely is that you want to make sure you're actually somewhat passionate about what you're doing. And in your case, Dillon, you definitely like your fish. And for me, it's more of increasing my skills and that sort of thing. And that's kind of why we're both doing it. But if you don't have a very solid reason for why you're doing what you're doing, and you just want to compete with somebody else or something like that, then it's probably not going to work out very well. So you want to make sure you have that motivation behind it. And as long as you have that, everything else you can probably figure out as you go.
Absolutely. Because the other thing is kind of the motivation. You need the motivation to start and really get going. The first video you put up, or the first podcast you put up, most likely isn't going to blow up. It's not going to be huge. So you need to stay motivated and not just give up at the first sign of failure. Because I don't think either of us would be here if that was the case.